Thank you, Chief. My name is Ed Drain, and I'm the Chief of the Plano Police Department, and I also want to just give you an update from yesterday's events. At about 20 hours yesterday, a subject walked into the lobby of the Plano Police Department's headquarters building at 909 14th Street and went up to a civilian employee and said that someone was acting strangely in the parking lot. This subject who walked into our lobby, we now know is Rashid. Rashid walked out of our lobby, and our employee contacted our communications dispatch to have officers meet and handle whatever problem was going on out in the parking lot. Before the responding officers could arrive, Rashid walked back into the police department, this time with a gun in his right hand, a semi-automatic pistol. When he returned back to the lobby, there was a civilian employee who was in the lobby along with a visitor who was in the lobby to be fingerprinted. The civilian employee attempted to de-escalate the situation and talk to Rashid. They had a brief conversation, and then Rashid raised his pistol and shot at her in the direction of our civilian employee. At that time, both the civilian employee and the visitor in the lobby were able to make their way to a secure area of the building. Officers inside of the building heard those shots being fired, and they made their way to the lobby. One officer was in what we call our record section. That's actually bullet-resistant glass, and so he made a decision to attempt to shoot through that glass because that would have been quicker than him retreating back into the building and having to go in the hallway and come back through a door. Another employee, another officer came through from a side door and was able to engage Rashid. He fired 3 rounds. All of his rounds struck Rashid. Rashid fired at least 1 round at him, and he also pointed the weapon at the civilian employee. So we have 1 count of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony 2, and we have 2 counts of aggravated assault against a public servant. Those are felony 1s. Of course, we will not be filing those charges. Rashid passed away at about 2:26 p.m. in a local hospital. So we do have good video footage of these offenses, both from our facility and from body camera. But the fact that our officers shot at Rashid, we still have another investigation, an officer-involved shooting to do, and we're doing that investigation in conjunction with the Collin County District Attorney's Office. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. Brian, Chief Drain. So as mentioned earlier, my name is Matthew DeSarno. I'm the Special Agent in charge of FBI Dallas. First, from my office and from my partners, as mentioned earlier, our condolences and prayers go out to Isabella, her family, her friends, and loved ones. They're suffering right now, and I can assure you the full resources of the FBI are working in close collaboration with our partners to get justice for Isabella. I'd like to remind all of you in attendance today that we're still very early in this investigation, and we won't have all the answers today. It's likely I will not be able to answer many of the questions that you all have, but we will do our best, and as more information comes out, we will look to inform the public. The Dallas FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force has joined the investigations of the shooting that occurred at the Plano Police Department, as you just heard, and the murder that occurred in Garland on Sunday. We're working with our law enforcement partners to determine what led to the incidents and if they were an act of terrorism. This remains an open investigation, and as I said, as more information becomes available, some of that may be released as it is verified. At this point, we do not believe that the suspect, Imran Ali Rashid, was provided assistance by others or that others were involved in these incidents. However, that's a top investigative priority for us to determine the extent of his relationships and contacts. This remains an active investigation, and the FBI remains vigilant in our efforts to detect and assess possible threats if they arise. We encourage the public to remain vigilant and promptly report suspicious activities that could represent a threat to public safety. If anyone has relevant information about Imran Ali Rashid or his involvement in this incident, please report it to tips.fbi.gov or call 1-800-CALL-FBI. At this point, we are open to take questions, and I'll turn it back over to Chief Brian to
Chief, can you speak to anything you can tell us about this letter or motive that you have found, and can you tell us whether or not these 2 people knew each other prior to what happened yesterday?
So I'll tell you that there is no indication at all that they knew each other. They did not know each other from everything we've seen. As far as the letter, we've turned that over to the FBI, and I'll let him speak on the letter.
Okay. So as Chief Bryant said, you know, early on in the investigation, they found a letter that made them make a decision to bring us into the investigation. The early portion of this investigation, we still have a long way to go here, has revealed that Rashid may have been inspired by a foreign terrorist organization to commit these acts. And that's really as much as specific as I can get about that. But bottom line is, we believe he may have been inspired by a foreign terrorist organization to commit these crimes.
Was he already on the FBI's radar at all?
So it's a good question, thanks. Rashid was the subject of a Dallas FBI counterterrorism investigation from 2010 to 2013. Over the course of 3 years, all investigative steps were taken. That investigation has been reviewed. I'm comfortable that the investigation was done thoroughly and properly. And in 2013, after the exhaustion of all investigative steps, that investigation was closed when the case team determined that Rashid at that time did not pose a threat.
So can you kind of get into the specifics of that investigation, being that it's now closed?
So I can't discuss specific actions taken during the investigation, but I can tell you that, again, that investigation has been thoroughly reviewed. We've looked at the investigative steps taken and looked at the way that the investigation was opened and closed and the conduct of the investigation, and I'm satisfied that the investigative team did that investigation properly and thoroughly. And, you know, one thing that's important to remember in these instances, that the dual mission of the FBI is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. So in any investigation, there comes a time when we no longer are able to continue investigating subjects. So that at the end of that investigation, the case team determined that the subject did not pose a threat. This was 8 years ago. Determined that he did not at that time pose a threat, and the investigation was closed.
When you talk about a foreign terrorist organization, which one exactly are you talking about? When you say inspired, what does that exactly mean? Does that
Yep.
mean that he was part of it, or you just watched videos?
Okay,
Can you just
good.
kind of explain that?
Certainly.
And also, is that same organization linked to the previous case as well?
What previous case?
The
The closed investigation. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about the specific organization because I don't want to give any organization the opportunity to claim any credit for this. What inspired means is we have not found indication at this point in the investigation that Rashid was either directed by or in contact with foreign terrorist organization actors. We believe at this point that he was inspired by, you know, rhetoric and or propaganda by foreign terrorist organizations. So it's the lack, inspired, we define inspired as the lack of direction, but the inspiration for the attack.
Could you speak more about the contents of the note found at Lewis's car?
I can't, the most specific thing I want to say right now is that we believe that he may have been inspired by a foreign terrorist organization.
Did you declare anything at all in the note, or what was what was that?
The note indicates that he may have been inspired by a foreign terrorist organization.
Why did he go from Garland to Plano? Because you have to kind of go out of your way to get there. And what brought him from a Lyft driver all the way to Plano Police Headquarters?
That's all part of the active, ongoing investigation that we're working to. Those are questions we're working to answer.
The investigation from 2010 to 2013, can you just kind of tell us, did he try to determine that he was a terroristic threat, or was he just trying to see if he put on a watch list? Explain that just in normal terms about what you guys did in 2010 and 2013 with the suspect.
So I'm not going to talk specifically about that investigation because it would disclose how we, you know, things that are relatively sensitive, and some of it is not unclassified. Bottom line on the investigation is, you know, we opened an investigation to determine if he was a threat, if he was involved in activity supporting terrorist organizations or a threat to the public. We worked that investigation over the course of 3 years, conducted many investigative steps, and at the time in 2013, 8 years ago, determined that he was not a threat. That's pretty much all. That's as specific as I can get.
Have y'all been able to search his house? Where did he live exactly? Did y'all search his house? And did y'all find any other weapons in his vehicle or on his person after the shooting at Plano PD?
So those are all part of the ongoing investigation that I don't think we want to discuss the specific steps
So
of.
why Plano Police? Do you have an asterisk on the note that says Plano Police?
Rashid did not live in Plano. He was not a Plano resident currently at any rate. We've looked through all of our databases and systems, and we can't find where we have any records of contact with him. That doesn't mean that he couldn't have been a passenger in a car, or maybe he wasn't cited or something, but we don't have any incident reports, no citations, no warnings of any kind of records like that whatsoever on Rashid. So we have no idea why he came to Plano to confront police officers.
How long will the lobby for Plano Police Department be closed?
It will be closed tomorrow, and we intend to open it up by Wednesday.
Can you spell the suspect's name, by the way?
I'm gonna give you a sheet that
Okay.
has everybody's names.
So should the public be worried that this is maybe some new tactic being used by terrorist organizations here? Do we need to be concerned, or is this a one-shot incident, or are you guys investigating something that can tell the public otherwise?
Sure, so at this point, I'll reiterate what I said before. At this point, there's no indication that he was working directly with others or that he was in contact with others who may be planning similar activity. Now, we're early in the investigation, and that's an investigative priority for us to determine. As far as the mode of attack, we ask the public again to be vigilant. In this instance, Rashid was surrounded by some people at least, right, who may have had information at some point. And generally, what we're seeing in these types of attacks is there is always at least one person, or maybe more people, who could potentially alert law enforcement to pending violent action. So we just ask the public to please notify us early, notify local police, notify the FBI if you believe that someone is a threat to the community.
Any clue why he targeted her? Because she was a woman, or she was a taxi driver, or at least anything?
We think he just called a Lyft and she's who showed up. We don't have any indication that he targeted her or that he targeted anyone in Garland specifically. We think he ordered a Lyft and she's the person that showed up.
Do you know any specific targets that he was going to?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for just one more question, okay?
Was Rashid ever interviewed by the FBI in the previous case investigation from 2010 to 2013?
Again, we conducted all logical investigative steps over a 3-year period, and that's about as specific as I can be about that investigation.
Can you clarify